turn this on or talk about the...
Oh, that's good. Well, if you were listening closely, you may have a little contradiction going on right now, where, I'll put it this way. 21 years ago, I was at Columbia University, and probably via CD-ROM, I got this package about how everything's digital now, and we had to get ready for digital. And like most of your working lives, or all of your working lives, or before you were born in some cases in this room, people have been telling you how it's all digital and everything's changed. And so but on the other hand, now it's all digital and everything's changed, and he's right. I mean, it's been going on forever, and yet it's all new. What's going on? Let me talk for a minute about what I think the world's doing right now that really does make this a profound change. Yes, digital has been here for a long time. But what's happened starting out here about 10 years ago, and really coming to full fruition in the past 4 or 5 with companies like Uber, or certain processes that Amazon and Google have perfected, is that computing is doing kind of what it's always wanted to do, which is touch every behavior possible. And so you've got this kind of series of expanding circles going back, you can go back to the 50s if you wanted to mainframes, going to microcomputers, going to mini computers, going to PCs, going to network computers, going to phones, smartphones, super smartphones, and now connected sensors pooled into the cloud. All of these little digital divisions that we think about, IoT and big data and cloud and software as a service, are all, I think, over the next 5 or 10 years going to be seen as part of a continuous process, which is to observe, modify, and respond to behavior in all forms. It's the promulgation of intelligence everywhere. And really, I was talking to someone at Microsoft Azure last week, and they were saying, really in our lifetimes, everyone, well, 4 out of 6 billion people on the planet probably will basically be within voice range of a supercomputer. It'll be through their phones, through some appliance, whatever. Everyone will be in range of a supercomputer that will monitor their behavior or interact with them based on voice commands. Language will no longer be a gating factor among people. These are things that are already at hand. I've got a little Google Translate on my phone. I could hit a button and talk with someone in any 40 or 50 languages. And that's going to get better and better. Some of the most remarkable barriers among people throughout human history are falling away, and then we're in this kind of continuous process. And so, yeah, you get these new disruptive companies that kind of understand this stuff a little bit or intimate, but here's the don't panic part and what I want to tell you. Nobody's got this figured out because it's still really early days. And the incumbent companies own something very, very valuable in the future, which is an understanding of customer desire and customer behavior. And really, you've always sold towards that in the first place, delighting customers. Every physical object was a proxy for delighting customers, right? And so you're closer to that, and you have that. The issue becomes, how do you seize that? How do you build on that? How do you create processes appropriate to that? I'm not the expert on that part, but I do have 3 people who are coming up to help me work through that a little bit on a high level, and then I hope we can proceed through that through the rest of the day. So, without further ado, please welcome Mike Selfridge from First Republic, Mike, Prith Banerjee from Schneider Electric, and Ganesh Iyer. Okay. Ganesh, why don't you take the end, because my lead question I want you to hit clean up on. And then Prith and Mike, and whoever gets there first gets picked. I think it's probably best if we begin by having you introduce yourselves and talk for a couple of minutes about your companies. And in your case, Ganesh, talk about some of the customers you've encountered in your work, and just what the company does, and then what you're experiencing in this transition to a world of very fast responsiveness and more closely observed behavior of systems and people. So Mike, why don't you, yeah?
I'll start. Thanks for having me. I'm Mike Selfridge, recovering analog leader, and I'm the Chief Banking Officer at First Republic Bank. I joined about 4 years ago. We're a $59 billion in total assets, private bank, business bank, wealth management firm. The company's been around for a little over 30 years, has a pretty storied history in terms of going public, being acquired by Merrill Lynch and DnA, coming out the other side of that, which was a little uncomfortable for the folks that were with the organization, and going public a second time. But the premise of the company has always been, and you may want to call it analog, but high touch, high quality service. And we measure that in terms of Net Promoter Scores. And our brand is up there with the likes of Apple, Ritz-Carlton, and Mercedes-Benz. That's what we strive to do. And of course, the transition of that is going to more of a digital world in terms of banking, which is being highly disrupted and continue to be, I think, disrupted over the next few decades.
What are the key elements of this disruption?
Well, I would say the channel by which the consumer is now consuming financial services is completely different than it was. And I think I spent 18 years at a bank called Silicon Valley Bank. I financed a lot of these emerging companies, and I saw the likes of some glorious companies like Facebook and Yahoo and eBay come through the front doors as young entrepreneurs and companies with 2 nickels to rub together on a plan. But when you see the power of what these organizations can do in a short period of time, it's quite impressive. In the banking world, it's traditional bricks and mortar, it's traditional service delivery that is being disrupted. And I think today, when you look at something like an iPhone that didn't exist in 2007, and there's 2 billion of these now in the world between all the devices on the smartphone basis, it's much more accepted. So from our perspective, whether clients are ready for digital or not, they're ready. And eventually it's just a matter of time before they get to the consumption of financial services in different channels.
And Chris?
So I'm Chris Banerjee. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Schneider Electric. I am very new to the company, joined about 5 months ago. My career has been in Hewlett Packard. I knew Benton from my days when I used to run HP Labs, so I was in the core of sort of futuristic technology being pioneered by researchers at HP Labs, and along the way I worked at CTO at ABB, and the last couple of years I was at Accenture. And I will try to connect up some of my experiences to my current job at Schneider. Schneider today is a global leader in energy management and automation. It's the ultimate analog company. We deal with sine waves of voltages and currents at 110 volts, 220 volts, 1,000 volts, 30,000 volts, and so on, right? In 3 phases. So it's an ultimate analog company dealing with analog voltages and currents. But where we are headed is sort of a journey. We see that in the past, Schneider has sold products, right? They sell contactors, switchgear, transformers, equipment, everything. And the world is becoming more connected, more digital, more sort of IoT and so on, right? So every product that we sell is becoming connected. So while in the past, we used to sell a customer a transformer, and then after 30 years, they'll buy another transformer. The transformer that we'll sell, the switchgear that we'll sell today, is completely connected 24/7. So we have a constant connection point with the customer about the experience. And so in the past, when that transformer failed, that's when they called Schneider, and then you try to provide a service or sell a replacement transformer. Today's world, the digital world, is the transformer will call home. We will know the transformer is about to fail. We'll do predictive analytics on all the assets that a customer owns. We have a much more sort of continuous connection with the customer. And so we are trying to pivot the company around from selling products in the analog world to selling services and outcomes in the digital world. And hopefully I have a chance to talk in more detail. But during my days at Accenture, we used to publish I was involved with publishing our Accenture Technology Vision in the last 2 years, which is all about every business and digital business, and living and breathing the transformation of Schneider Electric from becoming an analog business to a digital business.
So, Mike, you're in this wildly different business from Prith, and yet he's talking about observing systems, finding out what the customer wants, offering new style contracts that give them better performance and delivery. Do you see it the same way? Are you actually in a similar process but in an entirely different industry?
Yeah, I think similar to Chris' remarks and my earlier remarks, whether your client is a bank client or looking for routers or looking for large systems, I still think they have a desire to get on with their day. And unfortunately for us bankers, we've got our team over here, I don't think banking is high on everybody's list. You're busy individuals, and so the more efficiently and elegantly you can deliver a service, I think the better off it is for a customer. I think our challenge, a few things. One, when we were in the belly of Merrill Lynch and Bank of America, we had a pause on spending for a good 3 to 4 years. And so for the folks on my team that were with those organizations, we were told first of all, one, spending of money. So that meant coming in 2011 to 2014, we spent a good part of our time just playing catch up for the world. Infrastructure, bandwidth, things that don't deliver a great client experience necessarily, but certainly from an infrastructure standpoint, help quite a bit. And then configuring with the leadership of the team over here a more integrated approach to delivering the client experience.
Do you feel like you lost that much by missing that first wave?
You know, I do, but at the same time, in some ways, pausing allowed us, I think, perhaps in some areas to leapfrog current technology. But it's a little difficult. Banking is tough when you're dealing with millions of transactions in a given year, and your expectations are you want 100% accuracy. The harder challenge, I think, for us is we have bankers that have been with the organization from day one. They are analog bankers, if that's the term that Tyler was using. And they are used to delivering a certain service a certain way. I think it's clear to them, and clear to most of us now, that there is clearly a sea change going on. But it's a challenge from a cultural standpoint to get people to adopt and move forward where the future is headed.
The common thread between old and new, to me, and push back if I'm wrong, but the common thread between old and new and industrial and service business, or really the information relationship business, is the customer basically just wants to be understood. You know, they want to be seen for who they are and what they need. The interesting line you have to walk is one of privacy or getting in their face in appropriate ways, you know, and not showing up other times. But
So let me kind of expand a little bit on my earlier thoughts. So the typical asset in the sort of intensive industries that Schneider belongs, ABB, again we'll have a speaker from GE very soon, right? Are going through this transformation. And let me give you a very simple example to highlight this study, which is something I did for the World Economic Forum last year as part of an Accenture study on sort of the future of IoT. You look at a company like John Deere that makes tractors, right? And so if you're a farmer, I would buy a tractor from John Deere for $100,000. Now the farmer does not really need the tractor. The tractor is a means to the end to increase farming productivity. So what John Deere is doing as part of this whole trend that GE, ABB, Siemens, Schneider, we are all in, right, is to come up with a connected tractor, a tractor with sensors and so on. So as the tractor is farming, it will collect information about the soil, moisture, temperature, pressure, etc., and connect it up with the weather forecast. So through the cloud and with all this information, what John Deere is pivoting towards is farming as a service, right? If I'm a farmer, I don't care about a $100,000 tractor or $200,000. I care about increasing my farm productivity. How can I get service, can I get advice from John Deere about what crops to plant, when to plant them, what fertilizers to use, when to use the fertilizers, when to water, not to water, everything. And through that service, if John Deere can guarantee me an increase in crop yield to double the crop yield, I am a farmer, I'm willing to pay for it. So instead of buying a $100,000 tractor from John Deere, I sign up for services from John Deere. And I just give you John Deere as an example. This is exactly the revolution that I'm pushing for at Schneider Electric. I mean, our CEO hired me to kind of push that because he saw my pitch at the World Economic Forum. This is the transformation, right? instead of sort of, again, I'm sitting on a panel with a bank, so I need to kind of sound knowledgeable about finance, but the move from capex to opex, right? Instead of buying the $100,000 tractor, you will only sign up for as a service, farming as a service, electricity as a service, right? Just imagine, we sell a bunch of stuff to hotels, right? Large hotels, all the switch gear and panels and switches and so on. Does Hyatt Hotel care about that $1,000 transformer? No. If I can provide all of those buildings as a service, hotel as a service, so that the customers in the hotel have a fantastic experience, right? While if I'm not in the room, all the lights will be turned off. So I'm guaranteeing tremendous energy efficiency and fantastic sort of customer convenience in the hotel. That's hotel as a service. And you can take that in every domain that we serve. That's the transformation. So I think that's something I wanted to share with people.
Some strong sharing.
Just
I'm going to get to you in a minute, but just in case you thought he was laying it on thick. Last year, actually, I did a story about the extent to which farmers have to now be data wranglers. And they really just farm data in many ways. And I was out in Indiana at a farm. And you go to a cornfield now, for those of you who haven't been in agriculture environments, it's mind-blowing. From a distance, there was this band around all of the plants at exactly the same height in this guy's field. And as I came closer, the band was every ear of corn sprouting at exactly the same height over the ground. And his neighbor was not doing this, and there was no band, there was just corn sort of growing. And it was this uniform process like a factory. And the way that was achieved was in the planting season, April, May, the planter was measuring the angle of the land, the hillsides. It was the porosity of the soil, and it was planting seeds at a relative depth with an appropriate amount of water, so that when it sprouted a few days later, the one that was a little higher up wouldn't sprout at the same time and shade the other one. It would sprout just a little bit later, so the other one would grow to its height and they would grow together. And so they would uniformly reach maximum yield. I mean, it was the most incredible natural factory I'd ever seen. And it sounds kind of creepy maybe, but then you talk to the guys and they're like, well, we're headed for 10 million people in the world. If you know another way to feed them, bring it. But this is basically how we feed the planet. You know, we turn all of these things into repeatable processes. So, Ganesh, I do not know who your customers are. They may be farmers, but is any of this experience from the information business or the power generation business resonating with the kind of people you're meeting and talking with?
First of all, good afternoon, thanks for joining us today. It's interesting when Britt was describing about the farmer, he said the information would be on the cloud. Imagine the farmer who used to worry about this cloud has to worry about the other cloud too now. So on that note, Emphasis is a company which basically specializes around, one can say, fintech. We happen to be listed in India with literally 90% of our business coming from outside India, predominantly from the US. 75% of our business comes from the US. Now when we were discussing this, and Britt is a very passionate leader around innovation, technology, and we have a very experienced customer-centric banker here. What is interesting is, when we talk about any organization, including an IT services organization, many people believe that we are digital because we are an IT services organization. We need to know technology. So guys, you are digital, right? It's an automatic assumption that when you come from technology, you are digital. But when we talk digital, it's not just technology. It is about digital enterprise. It is a new way of doing things. Whether it is a 3D printer or robotics, it's going to fundamentally change manufacturing industry. Digital cash will change retail banking. And so no industry is being spared. So the topic which started interesting me, I happen to be a 17-year-old with 37 years experience being 17. So in that note, it is important as a CEO, I needed to find out, am I an obstacle for emphasis to be the company that it should be in the digital space? That's what started interesting me. Because it's very easy to talk about what do we offer as emphasis in digital space. Because naturally you go to the customer and say, this is what we bring to the table. But what is even more important for me was, how do I make emphasis a powerhouse of a digital enterprise? And I do have an analog setup. And as a CEO, am I ready? Should I be the CEO of this company which aspires to be a digital enterprise? As the CXO of the company, am I becoming an obstacle? Does it involve me to transform myself before I expect my leadership team or my members, my business processes, my offerings to change? And I've been in many discussions. People find it very easy to talk about offerings. Because they say, oh, digital, I offer this. Digital, I offer that. And many times, it's also they apply lipstick to the pig and they say it's digital, right? Because it's very common in IT industry, we hype up every topic. You remember in 90s, it was all about .com. We solved world hunger 6 times in 90s, now we are going to solve it 10 times. But the issue is, this is a revolution. And do CXOs who have grown up in an analog world, can they perform the function of taking their enterprise, including me, to success in this digital era? Can you operate in duality? And that's the topic which I started thinking about my interaction with Prith or Mike or many other customers. Goes to the heart of the issue. It's not what you're bringing to the customer, it's what you're bringing to yourself first as a CXO. And then we can talk about what you bring to the customer. So I'm not going to do a commercial as to what we bring to the customer, because that I will do one by one. Because customer is your only hope if you're an analog enterprise. Your customer is your only hope for succeeding in digital era, because you have a track record.
Let me ask you this, if it's something you bring to yourself, what is it you bring to yourself? What is this must have happened, you meet someone and you talk to them for a while, and then you think, you don't need me, you've got this totally wired. What are those attributes?
So I'm not sure I understood the question, but I mean, there are instances when I meet the customer and instead of me adding value, the customer ends up adding value to us.
Right. No, but you say, you bring the change to yourself. What is the change they bring that makes them successful?
Right. So, it is, one of the things which we have to learn is, if you look at the rhythm of a digital enterprise, whether it is a startup or a pure play digital, they demonstrate certain rhythm, which is very different from an analog enterprise. One thing is the culture of experimentation. Earlier we heard him talking about how the time is compressed. Time is compressed because innovation happens. Innovation happens because there is a culture of experimentation. So innovation is an outcome, and you have to have a culture of experimentation. Compression of cycle time is significant in a digital enterprise. You mentioned about it. Well, something which used to take 5 years now can be done in 5 days, and why not in 5 seconds, or microseconds, or nanoseconds? That's the question which is being raised. So whether your organizational model is ready for it, how do you cannibalize your existing business? These are real, in my mind, low-tech problems, but become enormously difficult to tackle in a corporate environment. Somebody said common sense is not that common anymore, right? So in that sense, we have to really think about, as leadership team, are we enabling the company to be successful in the new era? And every time you meet a customer, you listen and learn, and you start applying. I think that is a fundamental, and I can talk about my inadequacies later, but let me not hog the question.
You make a very interesting point about the culture of experimentation, and one of the saving graces of this age is the cost of experimentation and the cost of failure as a means to learning are so low financially. socially, they can be quite high because you fail in the eyes of others. And if that isn't approved of and seen as like, great, he tried something, that's cool, what can we learn? You can have a hazard. I think startups, in one sense, are so lucky because they make mistakes all the time. And nobody cares. Everybody knows they're on the path to profitability. The hazard, well, they're hoping to be on the path to profitability. And you're going to learn along the way. The hazard for companies is very much like the problem we all have. We're all prisoners of our history. And history in companies is expressed through cash flow, right? And there are existing systems and processes and an enormous social hierarchy around sustaining those cash flows that have to be shifted. What's the appropriate way to do that? The startup doesn't face that kind of social and financial hazard of changing things. What's the right way to do that in both your views? Sorry.
So let me I talked about Schneider being an analog company in terms of the products it sells, but let me share with you some insights about the people that Schneider has. We are a 25 billion euro company with 170,000 employees, and my organization, which is R&D, is about 12,000 R&D employees. In the past, when Schneider created new products, because they were primarily hardware products, the cycle times for bringing those products to market was 3 to 4 years, right? So we had very, very rigorous stage gate processes. Again, those of you who know all these things, right? So you have the initiate phase, the do stage gate, this, implement, etc., so 7 stages, and you had like big committees looking at it, reviewing it, and so because these products required like 100 million euro investment, and once you got the product, that transformer will be there for the next 30 years, right? So the processes that these 12,000 R&D engineers used in the past was for the analog world of the hardware world. The new world is the digital world, the software world. So the transformation that I am driving, again, I've just joined the company, but my CEO had already seen, right, the kinds of processes that the software companies, the startups use in Silicon Valley, right? And what is going on is going to be the agile method. So people talk about agile DevOps in the world of software. We are talking about agile DevOps in the world of hardware. The concept of a minimum viable product, just get that damn transformer out of your circuit breaker. Don't try to completely over-engineer it over 5 years. Get it out, do it, because in the new IoT world, you could actually do an upgrade of the system, right? With a hardware-software combination remotely, which you could not do. In the past, once I shipped to a transformer, that said yours dead, right? The Tesla car, right, which had all kinds of problems, but the Tesla, the software was upgraded on the fly, so even though that things were really low, it hit those things and we had all kinds of explosions, those could be changed. Same things are happening in this world. So we are transforming the processes by which we design new products to be more agile, even for the hardware world, right? So the hardware software world.
For those who don't know, Tesla had issues around its suspension, and this was all the cars Tesla had sold had this issue around suspension. Normally this would be a massive recall. They actually just did a software download to their cars, which are connected through various cellular systems, and were able to raise the suspension of the car. And that's on a mass level. On a personal level, the Tesla car understands drivers' habits. It washes drivers and takes a software download every 2 weeks. And ultimately, it kind of personalizes itself to the car. So we're in this very interesting phase in manufacture where objects are in some sense finished when they leave the factory, but they're really kind of potential because they become themselves once they interact with the customer. And so they're hyper-personalized as well. And that's not an idle kind of statement. That applies to kind of every interaction. It wants to personalize in an appropriate way. We really are in an age of sort of biological metaphors. Mike, why don't you talk about the back end of this? How is that affecting the staff, the internal processes, to have to be so responsive, to have to be aware of customers, to have to be sort of self-aware in a new way.
Well, software, I'm thinking of the last question as well, and I you know, if you just right back, we'll go back to a little bit of Ganesh's comments on the cultural side. As leaders, the cultural tone you can set makes all the difference. You are not going to know the next technology that's the next great thing in social media or banking or telecommunications, I think, in the next 5 years. To show you how bad I am at predicting, I was dealing with these companies every day. I had an offer from a startup called Cisco Systems I turned down. I stayed in banking. And I had a chance to invest in a company I thought was a disaster called Uber, which at the time was a limo service, and I thought there's no possible way a company like that will succeed. But those companies, to your point, could change on a dime, and if Uber in 2010 went away, you wouldn't know the difference. We tend to focus on these tremendously successful companies, not realizing there are thousands of dead companies littered on the side of 101 that nobody talks about. But they can take a risk that First Republic Bank cannot take in certain instances. If First Republic goes under because we took technological risk, that's a headline story in the Wall Street Journal. That's not where I want to be. So back to experimentation, we sort of bucket the world into three areas. One is the core business. You can't take a lot of technological risk on the core business. This is keeping criminals out of our online banking system. This is processing transactions and loans. This is the engine that runs the bank. You don't risk that. The middle part is the growth business. It's not a huge piece of the enterprise, but it's fast growing. So we can take a little bit more risk in the fast growing, maybe some enhancements to technology. The third bucket is the complete experimentation, small bets, little seeds here and there, and we can take a lot of bets, but as that comes into the core growth and the basic business, we have to keep our guard up.
What's a good example of a little bit?
Well, I would say right now, the online mortgage application process for us is completely analog. Our relationship managers will send 8 PDF files to a client who will fill out and gather piles of paper and fumble their way through it and get it to us, and they'll get it a little bit wrong, and then we'll go back. And the back and forth is a pretty arduous process versus an online system that could have a little bit more of an elegant delivery of financial information. So a little pilot here, maybe with a few clients, maybe a few more, and start to gain success. And then Hugh Westermeyer and his team can figure out how to integrate that into the core process. But that's more of a linear path as opposed to a big bang. And I think to your comment about some of these startups, they can go for the big bang without having to worry about, I'm sure they worry about going out of business, but it's not going to be impactful for 160,000 households.
Right.
So, one of the things which we are starting to do is to have startups within the company. So, and as Mike rightly said, there is core which you don't touch. So when a customer signs a contract with us for certain project or certain services, we think of it like banking. You cannot fail the transaction, right? Just like, imagine your customer coming and saying, hey, I've got $100 less in my balance. Or I sent $20,000 and the other side received only $11,000, $9,000, some hacker took it away. Won't be accepted. Absolutely right. But so that is core, and we have to preserve that core. But on the sidelines, what we have started doing is we started supporting within the company startups. We call it startups, just to distinguish, because it's corporate supported startup. So if brilliant people, youngsters come up with a bright idea, we say, okay, we will fund it, you go and experiment. If you fail, you always have a job within emphasis, you can come back to the mainstream. But please go and experiment. Talking about cultural thing, if you know about India, India is academically very centered. Any failure is shunned upon in general. I'm saying I don't want to stereotype it. So if you fail, it's a huge black mark. So if you want to promote a culture of experimentation with 20,000 employees in India, it's a tough one, right? And what we are doing is we are creating these role models so that everybody feels encouraged to step up, step out of their comfort zone and experiment. I tried something and I failed. I'm going to share that with you. I went to my wider leadership team I said, why don't we do away with titles? Right? I will do away with my title as CEO, Ganesh Iyer, emphasis. All of us do away with title, president, executive vice president, senior vice president, junior senior vice president, all of it. Do away with titles. Guess what? The moment I proposed, there were about 37 people in the room. You could hear the pin drop. Because for a minute, they thought it was a decision made by me. And they were respectful to the CEO, but I could sense that this was not going anywhere, this suggestion. Why? Because people derive their value from their titles. If I take it away, they may start feeling naked. So I didn't push it immediately, because you have to figure out what battles you want to fight as a CEO, right? But the point which I'm trying to make, as the world is changing, startups are coming and planning to have taking your customer away. But what you have is your brand. You have your track record with the customer. Customer won't switch if they know they can rely on you for their success. It's as simple as that. Customers don't like to switch. So the only strategy which we are following is centering customer to everything that we are going to be doing, and spreading the customer, the culture of experimentation, if I may.
Now, I want to ask each of you what you think is the most, you can address it anyway, core, defensible, hardest to attack part of your business, and how do you treasure that? And while you're thinking about it, I'll tell you, I put this once to Eric Schmidt, the head of Google. I said, what's the thing that's going to just prevent a search engine from killing you? And he said, spell check. And I thought, that is so weird. And I was like, so what do you mean? He said, well, we have logs of every misspelling. And over time, we saw them correct it. And so we know when people misspell this way, they really tend to mean this thing. And that's how we were able to offer suggestions or do searches that corrected their spelling and say, do you mean? That changed behavior around us, and there's an expectation in search now that even if I misspell it, don't know what I mean, no one else can get that knowledge, because anybody who goes into a search engine makes a misspelling will be like, God damn it, why can't you do what Google does? And I thought it was a very interesting insight into something they had captured that was going to be very hard to recapitulate. Can you think of analogies inside your business? It may be the brand and customer relationship aspect, or it may be technical knowledge, or it may be what you offer in terms of services. What do you think is defensible, and how do you foster that?
Yeah, today, I would say for us, the high-touch service model is the most defensible piece of VersaPilot. Having said that, I also view the world as the personal relationship extremely high, the technology experience not as high. We need to get the technology experience up, and we're working on that. We're doing quite a few major projects right now to get it closer to the personal high-touch relationship. That's our goal, but we don't view, like a lot of the world, a bifurcated, either a person or a fintech solution wins. There's an opportunity for everyone to play, in our opinion. And again, our model is a little bit different than a bank that covers millions and millions of accounts across the globe.
Well, that's great.
I think it's great for us.
Sort of like spell check, you would want something over time that somebody else is going to have a hard time replacing.
That would be the goal. Now, the expectations of the consumer are obviously far different and continue to be far more demanding in terms of what they'll want from us. And so that's where our investments are going.
Yeah, you got to feed that.
Great. So from our perspective, we, as I said, Schneider Electric is a specialist in energy management and automation. And if you look at ultimately, right, the real most important problems that the world needs in terms of humanity and so on, it's access to energy, water, food. That's it, right? People don't care for Uber, right? You may do things on your smartphone and so on. Those are all good to have. You cannot live life without energy, without water, without food, right? So as we dissect, well, we are not going to solve the water problem or food problem, but we are sort of really focused on the energy problem. Now, if you look at the energy sort of problem, right? About the 7 billion people on Earth, 1 billion people do not have access to energy. In sub-Saharan Africa and so on, 1 billion people don't have access to energy. Another billion people in India have access to intermittent energy. You have load shedding, sometimes power comes, no? Some of the people from my Indian colleagues can sort of resurrect. When I went to school, right, in India, half the time when I was studying, my power kind of went off. So I may have it, may not have it, right? So it's sort of intermittent power. 2 billion people not having safe, continuous power is not right? So we at Schneider believe that having access to energy is a basic human right. You cannot take that away. So we are in such a core business that I think we will be essentially, if we can continue to deliver that value, safe, efficient, sustainable energy to all people on the planet, that'll be just an amazing thing. And now, so as the energy requirements are increasing, right? You have a lot more industrialization happening, energy requirements are increasing. The inefficiencies, I mean, there's so much inefficiency in the whole energy distribution, right? You generate energy with nuclear, whatever, by the time it ends up in your computer, right? You have lost sort of 40% of the energy. So there's tremendous opportunities for improving the energy efficiency, especially as the world is going more renewable, right? You have, in the past, energy used to be generated nuclear or hydroelectric, and there's a star network that would send the power to your homes. Today, as different governments, like Governor of California is saying 50% renewable by the year 2050, these are hard problems. You have power being generated through solar, through wind. These are intermittent sources of energy. And you have it in a distributed way. So distributed renewable energy, how do you manage the grid? These are hard problems to solve. So it will not be possible for a Uber to kind of disrupt a core technology that Schneider is in, or ABB, or Siemens, or GE. I think, therefore, we feel good about it, but we have to continue to provide that value of safe, efficient, sustainable energy to all the people on the planet.
Some basic engineering stuff.
Some basic engineering.
In some ways, I don't feel safe. The day when I start feeling that my customers will keep giving me business, I think that would be the beginning of the end of emphasis.
No, but every competitor.
No, I'm going to come to that. Let me finish the answer. I also believe our size gives us tremendous advantage. Because we are like First Republic in IT services. Or we aspire to be First Republic in IT services. Customer centricity. And our size gives us advantage. We are not too large. And we don't aspire to be too large. Because I fundamentally believe the new mantra going forward is not too big to fail. The new mantra is going to be too big to succeed. Because the moment you become bigger and bigger and bigger, you start thinking of customer as a digit. And the moment you start thinking of customer as a digit, you lose that touch. We are in high touch business. We are on the path to being First Republic in IT services business, and that is what is going to keep our business intact and prospering.
We have time for questions from the audience. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to get a perspective on digital currency, because nobody kind of mentioned that, and I happen to believe that it's going to change commerce so tremendously. Today, we've got so much invested in all of these ERP systems that are the core of what we do, managing all of our transactions. And I really believe that digital currency could revolutionize how we all do business.
Do you mean, when you say digital currency, you mean Bitcoin and the blockchain protocol?
Exactly.
Or do you mean
Exactly.
Stripe and the whole payment system? Or a bit of both?
All of the above.
Okay.
Right? And-
Money guy.
And I think certainly some of us in the room before we die, I think it's going to be, we're already hearing about the outcome of the recent test that we've done between the 7 biggest banks in the world. So very interesting.
Yeah, it fundamentally comes back to what do you believe as an organization? For us to be a fast follower in an area, let me step back. the world of fintech, which I find to be too broad, technology for financial institutions. What it's really boiled down to is peer-to-peer lending, payments, cryptocurrency, that being the likes of Bitcoin. For us, the way we view something like payments is to be a fast follower and jump onto Bitcoin would have been a bit of a wreck for us. And in hindsight, that's true because of the various types that ended up belonging on Bitcoin. I think for those banks that took more of a leading edge and dabbling there, find themselves in a bit of a predicament, either in the clients they're dealing with or even the regulators who have yet to really opine, is this the mechanism by which payments will occur globally. I think the trend is there, and what's coming out of it is more the blockchain technology, which we haven't quite figured out how to use yet, but it has implications of security, ledgers, and the ability to move money around the world. So I think it's too soon to tell, but and I don't think it's going to apply for us. I think what you're saying, though, is there a more of a decade-type trend in place? And the answer is yes. The 7 banks you're referring to, I think, are belonging to the blockchain technology, as opposed to Bitcoin itself.
The SEC is looking at blockchain and will work out something along those lines. And the regulators are a stumbling block. I do think you're quite right. The currencies themselves may actually be noise because the volatility drives people nuts. The use of blockchain for things like clearance and interbank clearance of sort of non-money center banks, clearly going to be huge. And as soon as that gets a little bit of regulatory clearance, every bank in the world is going to try and develop its own network of relationships. And that in itself will be incredibly disruptive.
Well, what it goes back to is two things. The blockchain on the security side, what are you really solving with a Bitcoin solution? You're solving a client experience that, much like the energy industry, has tremendous inefficiencies built into it in terms of payments globally, dealing in different currencies. And if you can solve that from the client perspective, that's a big win. And I think that applies to just about anything that we do in financial services. Other questions?
Can I ask you a perspective? Because I thought there was a really interesting point in the panel where I think all of our panelists agreed that we need to protect the core.
Yes.
That's what pays our bills right now.
Right.
From your perspective, having covered technology, at least the last
I was hoping you'd ask about journalism. Go ahead.
Do you think that's a safe strategy, the right strategy to protect the core and innovate on the sidelines? Or maybe it's a loaded question.
Well, not to get too Clinton-esque about this, but it depends on what you mean by protect, right? Is protect to keep it just the way it is? No, that's insane. That's, how many stegosauruses are wandering around the planet right now? Protecting is trying to define what it is you offer in the most effective way possible and adapting it in a steady, gradual, and very aware kind of program. And I will say, journalism, this is entirely personal. I do not speak for the New York Times, but I was at an institution before this that is, in my mind, trying to advance in a way that isn't effective. They're heading towards a very, very web ad supported model. And the Times, I like the paywall, I like subscriptions, because I think the core for an institution that does good quality journalism is, well, back up. Journalism sells 3 things. It sells speed, knowing something quickly. It sells authority, is this true? And it sells context. How do I place this in the world? What does this mean? For an institution like the Times, we need to play in the first space of speed, but nobody can win that because everybody's a reporter now. Authority, the Boston bombing, our numbers go through the roof because what we say is probably going to be the dependable thing, right? And context, we've got guys all over the world. We have, people who are colonels in the army writing about war. We have people who have devoted themselves to a life in China writing about China. So we have authority. We sell those things. There are some ads you can sell off that because it attracts a certain kind of clientele. But people who hunger for that authority and that context can also pay subscriptions because they're paying that premium. So our core is 2 of those 3 aspects. The other one will play in and have to show up in and have to be aware of. But we protect that core and we grow it accordingly, right?
And I'll clarify what I meant when I made those comments by core technology. It's not that we don't look for ways to innovate core technology. To your point, if you just let it sit, eventually it just, I think it's atrophy.
Yeah,
You just spend a lot more, if it's a new wire system or a new online banking platform, we're going to spend a lot more time and a lot more money making sure that what's new comes in gradually and takes over so that it's very accurate and done correctly when the time comes that all those clients are consuming that new capability.
We're getting the hook. Thank you so much.
Thank you.